pissed and walked out. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have taken it that far. I was like, I shouldn't have taken it that far. I should have just said, yeah, thank you.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I should have just said thank you. And
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh my gosh.
welcome, Earthlings, to the latest episode of the Recap Film Buffs
I
podcast.
didn't know we were recording.
I'm your host. That's the way I like to do it. I'm your host, Dan Zellers, along with my angelic co-host, Mr.
Angelic. That is the first time I've ever been called angelic in my life.
And probably the last.
Not even your mama.
Sammie Castle. Not even my mama.
We are joined here today by our good pal and special guest, Mr.
Michael Burke.
Thanks for being here, Mike.
I'm glad to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
I
hate it when we have people with better voices than me.
Yeah, we're in danger of being shown up here
Nah.
locally. Now, I had the idea to have you on the podcast several months ago when you announced at the film festival that you were going to be directing a radio. I'll let you describe it. What's the best way to describe it?
It's the movie It's a Wonderful Life turned into a radio play set in the 1940s. So we have actors playing characters, and it gets really confusing, but it's a lot of fun. A little bit of the history on it. Back in the 1940s, a lot of the radio stations did teleplays or radio plays over the air. In fact, Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed did a few versions of It's a Wonderful Life on radio after the movie. The person took this idea and script, turned it into something in the late 90s, and it's been done at various places. It's being done at the Little Theater in Winston-Salem over the weekend of December 15th, 16th or so. And so you have the actors coming in playing actors from that time period, and we talk about some of the films or pieces that they've been involved in, and then they take on the role or roles of folks in the play. Now, there are a lot of people in the movie, but we have a couple folks. George Bailey, for example, is played by a guy named Josh Geary, who, if any of you are wrestling fans, he's a local wrestling guy, and is just a wonderful actor, a lot of fun, nice guy. And he's playing George Bailey. But the other folks who are in there, for the most part, are playing multiple roles. So you've got the same guy playing Ernie the cab driver. You have the same guy playing Clarence the angel. He's also playing a man in one of the scenes. He's playing a friend of Uncle Billy's. He is just in and out, back and forth. And all of this goes on in front of you as you're watching this play happen live.
Very cool.
Which is as it was in old radio days, too. You would have a lot of guys doing a lot of different stuff.
And
That's correct.
And where will it be broadcast? At 8.5?
It's not going to be broadcast.
Oh,
It is
okay.
going to be a
It's a
live theater performance with the subtext that, we're actually broadcasting this live coast to coast.
Okay,
as
so
they say.
it's a radio
Yes.
production style stage play. Okay, very cool.
I'm going to try to go. I'm
I'm going to try to go
catch it.
too.
Now, I want to add also, with one of our sponsors is also bringing in some movie props and memorabilia from the film.
Oh, wow.
As part of the display there in the lobby of the Arts
Really?
Council Theater.
Wow.
So,
that's
well
pretty
worth
cool.
it if you're interested at all in old movie memorabilia.
Very
No.
Yeah, I know. I
wouldn't think
just
I'm
seen some of
interested
your
in collecting nothing. The good movie posters aren't even here. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all at my house. So.
Well, ever since I heard you were doing this, I thought, man, this would be a perfect guest for this show because I love this movie. It's one of my all-time favorites, and we've been kind of holding off on doing it. We would have done it last year, but we talked Christmas Vacation instead. And
Also a good holiday film.
That was
Yeah.
Tom Ackerman,
Yeah.
the DP,
so.
who's teaching over here at School of the Arts.
Yeah, so that was a good episode, and Sammie, you said this is not necessarily one of your favorite Christmas movies, or you
It's
just haven't seen it very
well,
often.
yeah. I'm just not. I don't know. I don't know if we just didn't watch it a lot growing up, or it just wasn't. I would catch pieces here and pieces there. It's not something they make a super big deal out of when they show it. AMC, I'm sure, shows it a lot.
I think NBC shows it every
NBC
year.
probably shows it every year. But I think, for whatever reason, when I was a kid in the 70s, they always liked showing Wizard of Oz about this time. And that was kind of my go-to black and white
Well, partially.
Yeah, partially. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm from a little. Well, I mean, you're you're just a movie buff, so I don't know. For some reason, this is one of my dark places that I just didn't see it a lot.
It's surprising, though, because in the 70s, and that's where It's a Wonderful Life sort of got its second legs, there was a copyright issue. And no one was holding the copyright, so the TV stations were able to broadcast it without having to pay fees.
It was
So
a clerical error.
I ever remember sitting down watching it.
There was a good period there from like I think it was 74 to sometime in the mid 90s where it was in the public domain, and so that meant TV stations played it all the time because they could, and that's really where it became a holiday classic. I think when it first came out, it was pretty much a box office bomb. Or failure, all right,
Yeah.
Well, it didn't make as much as they had expected. The failure is probably too strong, but they had looked for it to make a lot more, and were disappointed when it didn't, obviously.
I think, what may have happened is I may have watched it once and it just didn't hold my interest. My go-to Christmas movie for that time frame was A Christmas Carol.
Which version?
The George C. Scott one.
Oh, okay.
Probably.
That's my favorite.
That's the one.
mid-'80s.
And it's kind of got that creep factor to it. And I'm
Yeah.
a horror guy,
Yeah,
so
true.
it's got a little bit of creepy in it. So maybe that's the.
It's got a lot of creepy in it. It's a scary ass movie.
That's true too.
See, and again, being a few years older than you, the Alistair Sims version from England was the one that really appealed to me for Christmas Carol, and the one that's my go-to every year. I have to watch it, or it ain't Christmas.
I'm the same way. For me, it is the George C. Scott version. I usually watch it Christmas Eve, every Christmas Eve, before I go to bed.
Well, now I can't tell you. It's been years since I've watched that movie too. My go-to is A Christmas Story. Because it plays all day on TBS.
Yeah, you can't help it.
So, and I literally just turn the TV on. My wife hates it with a passion. But I'll just turn the TV on TBS and we'll catch it at various points. You know,
Just the spider.
Just enough.
It's Christmas, honey. Guess what?
Come on, let's go ahead and stick our tongue to the pole.
I don't think this works. Let's try it out. Let's see if it's true.
And then I'm also kind of that modern age Christmas guy where Gremlins and Die Hard are two. Somewhere ranked Die Hard as the best Christmas movie of all time this year, and I was like, I
did share a meme on Facebook that said, "It's not Christmas until I see Hans Gruber fall from the top of night."
I saw that. I agree wholeheartedly.
I like it. One thing I want to mention right at the top of this film, you see the logo for Liberty Films, and correct me if I'm wrong if you know more. This was pretty much a new company or studio that was created by Capra and a couple other filmmakers, in which the intent was to get away from the studio system and to do their own thing. And it very much of how reminds me of like DreamWorks, like they did kind of like 20 years ago and made a new studio basically where they could be in charge and do their own movies. But what that turned out meaning for this film, which if I'm not mistaken, It's a Wonderful Life was the first film under Liberty's maybe.
That's correct.
Capra pretty much rewrote the script, produced it, directed it, and financed it personally with a lot of his own money, which is pretty risky business, especially as it turns out, this film not making as much money as they needed it to.
Yeah, he did get some distribution assistance from some of the larger studios.
RKO, I think, who it was the original holders of the story, the short story,
The Greatest Gift.
The Greatest Gift by Philip Van Doren Stern. That's a cool name.
It's a very early 1900s name.
Yeah, I read it last night. It's only 15 pages. It's a short story, and he tried to get it published and couldn't get it published, so he printed up, I think, 200 copies and put it in their Christmas card and sent it out to people. And it caught the attention of RKO Pictures, and they bought the distribution rights for a pretty decent amount, especially for the time. And they couldn't do anything with it. They tried to make it several times with different actors. I think I've got Cary Grant was originally set to star as George Pratt in the story. But it went through.
I know George.
Do you know a George Pratt?
I know a very talented George Pratt. He's a comic book artist and teaches at NYU.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. George is a good guy.
and eventually it found its way into Capra's hands, and he bought it from RKO for the same price that they bought it, and they even gave him the numerous drafts of the script to make it. So it's an interesting little history behind this film.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Mike, I'm going to probably ask you 1,000 questions.
Go for it.
So, Capra, you hear when you hear about great directors, Capra's one of the guys that gets mentioned quite a bit. He was well established by the time he directed this movie.
Very much so. Okay. Very much so. He had done Mr. Smith Goes to Washington
With Jimmy Stewart.
With Jimmy Stewart.
It happened one night. Was that before this?
That was well before that.
It happened one night.
It was late 30s, I want to say. But in fact, this was Jimmy Stewart's first movie after World War II.
Okay.
He had been in the Air Force during the war, and then he got out. He wasn't sure if he was going to be able to reestablish his career. And Capra contacted him and said, "I've got this script, and I'd love to see you in it." And Stewart said, "Okay, you don't want to know what it's about? No, if you're directing it, I want to be in it." And that is where history came from on this.
Yeah.
And while it didn't make much money in the box office, or as much as they had expected, it certainly reestablished Jimmy Stewart as a wonderful movie star.
I love one thing I like about old movies like this is the obvious sets. Yeah, the obvious that you know it's a
But
set.
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you believe it's real. You believe it's a real.
And it's beautiful. I mean, that you wouldn't be able to shoot this in the real world like you can this.
But set building's become a kind of a lost with CGI and stuff. It's becoming very lost to time.
Very much so, yeah.
I mean, and of course, a set like this for a short little piece like this would probably cost a freaking $1 billion to build nowadays.
Well, in those days, they had the carpenters and the designers all on contract.
Yeah.
And if they didn't work them, then they were just wasting their money. So,
well, and I've got that, and maybe this, I'm not sure if this is true. You see different figures out there when you do research, but $3.7 million budget, which I can't, in my head, I can't figure out what that might be today.
wow.
What do you think? 50 million, 30 million, something like that?
More than that.
Think so?
I was
I would say more
doing,
than that.
for the play, I was doing some research, and they talk about George Bailey making $45 a week.
Yeah.
And that's equivalent to about 800. So whatever I think it's like 130%, or not 130%.
And I saw the scene where Potter offers him a $20,000 a year salary,
Yes.
and that would be the modern equivalent of about $350,000 a year.
Yeah.
Which is
And that's
it'd be
why
hard to
it's just-
turn down. Yeah. This is something I preach on the show almost every episode, that you have to watch a movie within the context of when the film was made. You know what I mean? Because if you don't,
there's
especially in a film like this,
There's some stuff going on early in this movie. I was like, I kind of raised an eyebrow and I went, "This is a beloved Christmas movie."
Oh yeah, and you know it is a Christmas movie. I think there is a good little debate you could have about that as to whether or not this could be considered a Christmas movie, because there's nothing overtly Christmassy about it. You know what I mean? It's
Other than it takes place on Christmas Eve.
It takes place on Christmas Eve, and this movie gets really dark. It goes to some really dark places, but I think it's the sentiment behind it, you know, especially the ending and the character arc that happens. That's very much Christmassy. You know, it's very much about hope and joy and you know,
and the value of friends.
very much so. Yeah, Mike, you said earlier, this is, and I agree with you, this is one of those films that it's tough for me to watch this whole film without tearing up a little bit. You know, if I'm by myself in my house, I'll probably just let go and just. But
Well, in fact, there was discussion. Capra didn't look at this as a Christmas film, and it wasn't intended to go out in December.
Sure.
They did that so it would catch the 1946 Academy Awards. And unfortunately, that put it up against Best Years of Our Lives, and which swept everything.
Stiff competition.
So this didn't have the connection with everybody that they hoped it would, and the award capabilities. If they'd waited till the next year, its main competitor would have been Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh, well, that would have been interesting.
The drugstore scene in here, the druggist himself, Mr. Gower, was named after a street in Hollywood that Columbia Pictures had been on, where Capra and Stewart had both worked, Gower Street.
Now, I guess this is. I've probably seen the last 45 minutes of this movie a bunch. I didn't remember a lot about this beginning stuff when George was a young kid.
So the film starts out with angels. Well, it's already established at the very first scene of the movie that there's a man in Bedford Falls who's pretty desperate and he's lost hope and he needs divine intervention. Yes. And so these angels are discussing what needs to be done. And they send Clarence, a second-class angel.
AS2.
AS2, angel second class, to save George Bailey. And in order to do that, they have to show him his history. And so we kind of take a flashback to as George is a little boy, and you're seeing his father deal with Old Man Potter, the rich bastard of the town. I don't know a better way to...
He was the one with a lot of money, and he used that money to control as much as he could get his hands on.
Exactly, yeah. And as we see later in the film, spoiler alert, if Old Man Potter had his way, the whole damn town would be called Pottersville. You know, this is the kind of guy we're talking about. But one thing I wanted to mention. Oh, God, it's hard watching this kid get slapped by the drunk druggist. And no one ever calls him a pharmacist. They call him a druggist.
He did not slap him. He boxed his ears.
There's a difference. In the 40s, he boxed his ears.
Well,
boxing ears hurts like hell.
Yeah. Well, this is what you're talking about before. You have to watch a film in the context of its time.
Exactly.
And at that point, that was not seen as child abuse. At that point, now it would
down that road.
All right.
Gower being handcuffed.
I still think we should beat kids, but that's beside the point. That's just never mind. I was paddled as a child, and I turned out just fine.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of them nowadays that need to be paddled.
Well, I think an argument could be made, but there's a difference between paddling a kid as discipline and then slapping the shit out of him until his ears bleed.
Botched his ears, man.
But he bought him a suitcase, so good trade-off.
Yeah, 15. How many years later?
Well,
he made it up.
That's because he pointed out that
he was about to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And so now we quickly jump to a few years in the future when I guess it's supposed to be like an 18-year-old.
Yeah, he's George a bit older Bailey, than that, really. But
played by 40-something.
He's playing right after high school.
Jimmy Stewart is planning to take a trip around the world. And
this is after high school because his brother was graduating, right? So, and he's a couple years older. So
right after high school, his plan is to go see the world. And
he has wanderlust from the beginning, as we saw in the drugstore scene. He's been made a member of the National Geographic Society, which was a big thing back then because you couldn't just subscribe to it; you had to be recommended for membership.
Yeah. One of the things I want to talk about. Probably a little bit as we go on, but maybe it's good to lay the groundwork early. I've always seen this as a somewhat loose adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Do you think that's fair to say, or is it?
There's a lot of similarities.
It is, and I don't think it's by accident. I think it's very. I wouldn't necessarily call it an adaptation, but it's I'd say inspired.
It treads some of the same ground. You end up in Christmas Carol. You're looking at how the life formed the person who is today.
Yeah.
This one, it's sort of the reverse, what the life would have been like without the influence of this person.
It's a good twist on it. And instead of where the Christmas Carol shows you his life in the past, we start off the film by the angels showing another angel what his life was in the past. So it's not the character revisiting his own past, like as in Christmas Carol, but it's them... the audience treading that ground first.
It cracks. This little bit cracked me up because she was standing over top of me. He was like, "You want me to pull you up a chair so you can listen?" Because she's overhearing everything.
Of course, her response is, "If I thought I'd hear anything worth listening to."
Well, and this really does lay some important character groundwork for George Bailey, as even his father tries to get him to stay and run the family business, and he just can't do it. He's telling me he's got to shake the dust of this crummy old town off his heels and see the world. And
I love that phrase.
which
Oh, there's some great phrasing all the way through this. I like different ways of speaking. It entertains me. I've probably mentioned this before. One of my favorite shows on TV right now is Vikings, and it's because the cadence of how they talk is so different. And to train themselves as actors to do that is amazing. So when someone uses different phrases that aren't necessarily, that are unique, and they speak in a unique way, I like that.
Well, I think there's something to be said that now there is a different way of people talking in films in the 40s, but then there's also this Capra-esque, which is a word we use nowadays, way of, you know what I mean? The way he sets up dialogue and his characters. Back then they called it Capricorn.
Yeah.
Because even then audiences saw it as being somewhat corny. Because this movie is extraordinarily sentimental, and you know, and that's part of its charm. You know, I think that's why this film works so well. But yeah, I think
the way Jimmy Stewart himself talks has become a trope within itself.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
So now we're at the high school dance.
In the gym.
And isn't it kind of weird that all these guys out of high school are coming back to the high school dance? In the 80s, in the 80s we called that Matthew McConaughey and Dazed and Confused.
Well, 70s.
Twice as well, yeah.
You also have to figure in a small town like Bedford Falls, a high school dance could be the only entertainment going on that night.
That's true.
So,
well, as someone who
they
from
stay
Patrick
the
County,
same age.
yeah, I can
All
with
right.
that. All right.
And now he gets his first look at
and
Mary.
The person that she's talking to is Carl Switzer, or Alfalfa. We were talking about this earlier.
About that in back, which I didn't know.
You're a big Rascals fan.
Yes, huge Rascals fan. There sure is.
It sure is. You think I was lying to you?
No, you kind of have to see it to. Aw. Hey! He's going to drop to one knee and go, "You are so beautiful to me."
And so they have this immediate attraction, and I think it's the first time he's seen her as
almost adult. Yeah,
I hesitate to say a grown woman because she's a high school
18.
senior, 18, and she's
legal.
Okay. This scene here, as I was watching it, I went, boy, did Grease pull from this a lot? Because it's similar in how somebody will come by and tap you on the shoulder and you get off the dance floor. It's a dance contest, which I'm sure that's the way dance contests worked anyway.
Exactly.
But it was I went, damn it, so it looks like Grease, and they're all doing the same dance, and it was.
I love this guy. I have the key.
And there's Alfalfa again.
And this is a real gymnasium in Beverly Hills, and it, from what I understand, at least
Still works.
It probably still works. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. See, I thought it was going to be some play up that George had. Oh no, it was George's idea to do that, right? Isn't that what the principal?
To open,
to
create it that way, yes.
Yes. So this guy's got everything going for him. He's at the dance. He's got the hot girl. And
He's about to leave town.
About to leave town and see the world. And everything is just coming up roses for him until it doesn't.
And he's a young, handsome, charming guy who's doing well with the ladies, and everything's going really well.
He this Alfalfa has thought
And now
he's going to ruin everything.
Alfalfa jumps in the water with him.
It turns into this big old party.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say everything's going well because there is this little bit of guilt he probably has that he's leaving everyone behind, and his father wants him to take over the business, and
That ain't much.
he's got to get away. But
I don't think so at this point.
He's made peace with it, and he's ready to say,
Right.
you know what,
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Shaking the dust, etc.
Exactly.
And then this lovely little romantic scene between the two of them.
Another very well done set. Very Wizard of Oz-esque set.
Well, I mean, from as far as I can tell, everything in this movie is a set. Even the town. The town's not real.
The town was a set, but it was filmed outdoors as opposed to in a studio set.
They built Bedford Falls in Encino, California, on someone's back lot, and at the time it was one of the biggest sets ever created. It was 4 acres, 300 yards long.
They just might as well build the town.
I know, pretty much, yeah. 75 buildings, 3 city blocks. And they even imported 20 full-grown oak trees and planted them into the ground.
Into the median
for
there,
this
yeah.
movie. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Well, at that
Now,
point, being a greensman for a movie was a big deal.
Yeah.
Now, wasn't this pretty risque for this time? This scene with her,
I would think so.
her coming out of the robe, and they're all lovey-dovey and very flirty, and
But as part of the romantic comedies of the time, a woman being naked wasn't the issue, as long as they were behind a screen or behind a bush. The old trifold screen that you would see in a lot of ladies' whatever bedrooms is a standard throughout this. And so to be there and the revealing of the outfits that's hanging over the edge is part of the mystique. Now, you never see anything.
yeah. This guy cracks me up.
Yeah.
Why don't you kiss her?
Youth is wasted on the
You
wrong
gotta,
people.
you gotta kiss her or talk her.
You want to see them
And
kissing?
that guy looks familiar, but
Hey, mister, come on back out here. I'll show you some kissing will put a hair back on your head.
I'll show you some kissing. Gonna make love to my hand. There it went.
Yeah, he started already.
That did not come out of my mind like I thought it was going to. Sounded a lot better in my head.
Good Jimmy Stewart masturbatory jokes. Okay, so just as he's at the height of his flirtation with Mary, the real world hits him, slap in the face, and tragedy strikes.
What am I doing?
In just a second.
Very interesting situation.
I have her robe.
Interesting situation.
And then he starts teasing her.
Oh, yeah.
This every day.
I'd like to have my robe.
Not at Bedford Falls.
And this was way before its time, because this is,
Give me my
the terminology is different, and it'd be a lot more footloose and fancy free now, but it's very, very now. Very
And I agree
just
with
be
you.
a
I
lot
think it
more
is a little
crude
bit
now.
ahead of its time, and I wonder maybe if that's part of the reason it didn't connect like it should have with audiences. Maybe it's
Possible.
just, I don't know.
It's a lot. I mean, nowadays when you see teenagers beginning their mating cycle, you see a lot of teasing. You see a lot of teasing, a lot of peeking back. Well, I guess it's kind of always been that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if I'm
It's funny
explaining
you
what
use
I
that,
want
that
to.
phrase kind of ahead of its time, because I think you could say it's ahead of its time, it's very of its time, and it's a timeless classic all at the same time, which is very, there are not many movies you can do that.
I think that's all.
Okay, so Pa Bailey has passed away from, and he
Gave up his trip to Europe.
now
Straighten things out here. These bad
So George stayed in town over the summer instead of traveling before he started
he
college.
gave up his trip. We'll skip
That's the
ahead a
first
little
thing
bit.
he's given up
Yeah.
to get this, to honor his dad.
Bedford Falls.
Make up your mind.
Yeah, we'll skip ahead a little bit.
Not coming in.
Some years have passed.
That's a thing of its time too, because I don't know.
Self-sacrifice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people would do that anymore.
I think it would depend on the person. I mean, you still see stories of people who help siblings through college because moving the family forward is something that's critical to them.
Yeah.
And this is 4 years later. His brother went off to college instead of him, and
married
and married and came back with both a girl
Really
and
good
a
drawing,
neat
too.
job.
I love
yes.
that moon. I love that moon.
George Lasso's Moon. And so, very much at his mother's behest, or maybe she planted a little seed in his head. He happens to walk by Mary's house, and she invites him in, and she's waiting for him, and she's definitely interested.
Yes.
Although she's kind of being courted already by the
Sam Wainwright.
Sam Wainwright. The
Hee-haw.
The
Yes.
hee-haw.
Hee-haw.
And he is in a foul mood. She is so
think?
happy to see him and wants to flirt with him, and he's not having any of it. This is such a I love this scene. It's maybe one of the best scenes of the film.
It's very nicely balanced. And of course, he's just come out of finding out that his brother has this opportunity for a job that will stop him again
which
from
has
leaving
thwarted
town.
his plan. Yeah, the plan was for the brother to take over. Then he goes to college, and now the plan's getting screwed once more, and he's in a bad mood, and he doesn't want to fall in love with her. You know what I mean? He wants to go do his own thing.
I'm not sure.
Travel the world.
I don't think at that point it's even doesn't want to fall in love. I think he's already in love. I don't think he wants to admit it. That's why he fought his mother.
Maybe you're exactly right. Maybe he just doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to give that part of himself over.
Well, George
So we-
Bailey, and fine fellow you are. What do you
And Sam is just living it up with this
Exactly,
name on
and
his shoulder.
still talking
Girl,
about,
still talking.
why are you messing with my girl? Well,
Yeah. I think they very cleverly put her there to kind of make the audience not feel so bad that she's talking to another man that, and so now they're sort of forced to stand close together to talk on the phone to Sam.
in fact, we're working this scene tonight with the play.
Were you?
And having a lot of fun trying to find the ways to make the intensity come forward,
Yeah.
where you don't have the difference of the camera shots, and as you would in a film, and as they were able to portray here.
Mary,
This is a great line.
Yes.
I'm here.
would you tell that guy I'm giving him the chance of a lifetime? Do you hear? The chance of a lifetime. Now you listen to me. I don't want any plastics, and I don't want any ground floors, and I don't want to get married ever to anyone. You understand that? I want to do what I want to do. And you're...
George.
Jimmy Stewart was perfect for this type of love scene, this type of intensity in a character.
You know,
You know,
it's very intense, but it's also kind of awkward. It's like
so it's
sloppy kissing and just
Well, but
it's funny you say that. I'll tell a story. Go ahead.
But looking at it in context again, in that time, you couldn't go beyond that level of kissing.
True.
And even there, if at least the looks on it, it was just open mouth kissing. They weren't
Yeah.
French kissing because you
But-
couldn't go that far at
But
that point.
even though she makes the joke, he's making violent love to me, mother. You still couldn't see something like that.
But but them kissing was what was considered making love at that point.
Yeah. Well, and it was the physical symbol of them falling in love and finally giving themselves over. So it under that context, the very next shot you see is they're damn married.
Yep.
It's funny you said it was kind of sloppy because that was the first kiss Stewart had post for 5 years in the movies.
Yeah.
And he told Capra he was very nervous about it. He really didn't want to do it. He tried to convince him to take it out of the script. He's like, nope, we're doing it. And so he I think a lot of his own nerves was put into that scene too. I think to very good effect. And we've talked about Jimmy Stewart's his charms a bit in our Vertigo episode.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite movies. Okay, so just as they're almost out, we have it's what, 1929?
I don't.
Is that what this is trying to?
I think so, but I think this is a little later in the 30s.
Yeah. So there's a run at the bank, and he has to go and give his own money, his own honeymoon money, to just keep the entire town afloat and to keep Bailey Building and Loan up and running.
And to keep it out of Potter's hands.
To keep it out of Potter's hands, that's right. And it's not just about him and the business. He's also worried about everybody else in town. You know, what'll happen if you can't make your payments under Potter? They're not going to help you like we will. He's going to kick you out on the street.
Yeah, I was hoping I had some of the numbers there. But that $2,000 is a significant sum of money
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were looking at spending a week in New York with that and then going out to Bermuda.
Yeah. My wife is Mrs. Bailey now.
And that's one of those things that Capra was so wonderful in scripting those little touches. And Jimmy Stewart, of course, excellent in acting them out on film.
It's a great actor-director combination.
When they worked together quite a few times, didn't they? Again, you work with the people you like to work with.
Yeah.
You feel comfortable with somebody.
And then if you're lucky, they're all skilled and talented, and that makes the whole product well. And that's the thing. I mean, looking right now with my situation directing Wonderful Life, we really have to dig into it. I've got a cast of people that, for the most part, I know and have worked with either on stage together or as a director-actor. And there's already a level of trust built up, and we're able to really take it some nice places.
It makes a difference liking the people
Oh, yeah.
you're working with, you know.
Yes.
Makes a big difference.
We got quiet. Oh, here we go, message there.
Another kiss.
Kiss.
So, unbeknownst to George, Mary has set up shop in the old house that they had knocked the windows out of as
The
teenagers.
Granville house.
The Granville house. And she's turned it into a nice, cozy home, and with the help of their friends, have made it a nice little honeymoon night, which was far from what they had anticipated and wanted to happen. But, you know, life hits you, and they've made the best of it.
Everybody on here considered this thing a flop. Everybody seems that it was budget was $3 million. It grossed $7 million. That's not a flop. It doubled its money.
They expected more, though. It was Jimmy Stewart, Frank Capra.
True.
Well, it's still, I mean, you see that today with a film that cost $200 million to make. If it only makes $300, that's a flop.
Yeah. True.
We see Mr. Martini and his family moving from one of the Potter's nasty shacks to one of the nice little homes in Bailey Park or whatever it's called.
Bailey Park.
And from what I understand, this is a little bit autobiographical of Capra, who was Italian, and I think his maybe
Sicilian.
Sicilian. Maybe he was.
Sicilian.
Is there a big? Do I need
There's
to be
a
careful?
huge
Do I need to be careful here?
Yes. I don't like the Sicilians. They're the dirty people.
I don't want to get whacked here. Okay.
Yeah,
Look
don't get
out for
whacked.
horse heads.
I worked with Italians for years, yeah. Bailey Park.
Do you know it was Capra first generation, or maybe Capra Jr. was first generation American? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Capra
But I
was
know-
born in Sicily.
I don't know, but I
I
know
think I read
this
that.
whole character and his family are sort of based on Capra and his own life experiences. It was a very personal touch for him, and it tells you what they probably must have thought of the man that helped them.
He was born in Sicily.
He must have had an awful high opinion of
He
the man
was
that helped him get a home. You know,
Six when they
this
moved
is-
to America, though.
Yeah.
Well, and again, probably in Italy, he was living in shacks there with his family,
Yeah.
and this step up to
To
what's been referred to as the American dream.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm not as adverse to these classical actors as is. He's a Barrymore. Is he part of that
Yes,
Barrymore
yeah,
family?
he is.
Okay.
Lionel.
Lionel Barrymore. And the bank agent, or the agent that came in was later played Sam Drucker in Petticoat Junction on TV.
Yeah, I thought I recognized him. He looked familiar.
I'm
And
gonna
that's
try
I
to
see a
find
lot
it.
of faces that are like, hey, I know them from something, and I'm sure it's.
This is a great little scene with Potter, and you realize what it, not just a greedy guy he is, but a slime ball too. And he very he offers George a job in an effort to buy him out and to buy his loyalty and to take over the town.
And he also plays games. He's got George in a much lower chair than he is.
Very much so.
Supporting your mother, paying your bills, you're able to keep saying, if you
Yeah, that's a definite power play. A lot of people who are
That's why you're in the good chair.
who are trying to who are trying to domineer and dominate people. It's they'll stand instead of sit, and always trying to look down at them. No, I have the good chair because of my damn office. See, I can lay back and it's still y'all are still bigger than me, taller than me. I have no issues subjugating myself to subjugate. God, I'm flipping out all sorts of big words.
So when we talked a little bit earlier about the comparisons that could be made between this and A Christmas Carol, I think it's interesting to talk about Old Man Potter, who is pretty much a living embodiment of Scrooge.
Very much so.
And it's
You're a
needed.
mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Because in A Christmas Carol, you don't have a George Bailey. You have old man Scrooge, who's kind of this bastard. Then you have young man Scrooge, who's not. And he slowly turns into this man over the course of the story. At the end is when you through seeing his past, present, and future is how you get this character arc from the old bastard he is to the man who loves Christmas and keeps it better than anyone Soul City's ever known. And in It's a Wonderful Life, you know, your main character George Bailey doesn't see what life was like earlier. We see that. He has seen what life is like in the present with if he had never been born. And it's not great.
No.
It's not good at all. And it's almost like the all three impacts of going back, looking at past, present, and future all at once. Like, you know what I mean? It to me, that's what it feels like. It's hitting him all at once with one ghost, one angel, instead of three ghosts, or four ghosts, technically.
Yeah.
Well, I would offer, though, that I agree we don't have a single character in Christmas Carol like George Bailey, but I think in each era he has people that showed him a better way to live.
Yeah, exactly.
With Fanny, his original fiancée.
And someone he turns his back on.
Fezziwig, who
Fezziwig.
he then ruined later,
Yeah.
and then into his current life with both Bob Cratchit and his nephew.
Well, and you could even argue Marley. You know, to an extent, he didn't care what happened to Marley. He died. Oh well, he's a good man of business. You know, I think it's kind of interesting to note. I found this in my research in one of the earlier drafts of the script. In the alternate reality, there was an evil George. There wasn't an old man Potter. Potter was Capra's creation, but there was a bad George and a good George. And at the end, they literally fought on the bridge to the death.
Well, now.
That's where Star Trek got that from.
That can only be
I was thinking Superman
Highlander.
3.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too.
Oh, man. So, I'm glad it happened this way because I'm pretty sure that film would have been not remembered like this one.
Okay, well, now
We wouldn't
here's
be
a
talking about
question. Without Capra, does this movie get made at all?
Well, no, because it almost did, and it just kept. It was in, I guess, development hell. You know, like I said, Cary Grant was originally attached to it, and it just never got made. I think a couple other directors had their hands in it. 3 different screenwriters worked on it, and from what I understand, they all hated Capra for what he did to their versions of the script.
Because he pulled the best pieces out of each one of those scripts.
Yeah, and then put his own.
I did read there was
in the
quite a
recipe.
few that were not happy with it.
But I think that's also a product of the time when writers back then were a bit more, they were held to higher regard than they are now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think nowadays when we see a film, we just kind of understand. Oh, it's the writer had the initial concept and the initial script, and then it got taken and bastardized and made to this other thing. Back then, I think films were strictly to the script and to the original ideas and concepts, and the writer was held to much higher regard. Dalton Trumbo did a version of the script, which was equally kicked out, So
that would be an interesting sidelight to see what Trumbo had put together for this.
I know. Hey, you guys hear that? You hear that noise? Oh my God!
Daniel,
Yes,
come with me.
Yeah, Dan.
My.
right here.
Come
Hey,
with me, my child. I have much to
Okay,
show you.
if you say so, I guess.
You might want to.
Sammy,
You might want to listen to that.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
And I'll be
Come.
right back, I guess.
Come
This
with
may
me.
take. This is gonna take.
I hope it doesn't take too long either. I hope they don't keep you.
Or something.
Oh, here we go, taking a call again. This never ends well for me.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, that one's kind of weird. We have some weird stuff goes on around here. We're big in Afterlife.
Am I supposed to be surprised, though, at weird stuff going on here?
No, absolutely not. But yeah, it's Pazuzu's called and Gozer's called, and we always get the bad side of that.
Now, was this the Pazuzu who was in the local jail, or is this the other Pazuzu?
Other Pazuzu. All right, let's take a phone call. Recap Film Buzz Podcast.
Hey, Sammy, this is Jimmy Stewart.
Well, hello, Mr. Stewart. How are you today?
From the Afterworld.
Yes, we were just talking about how I very seldom get good at Afterworld people.
Oh, we all listen to your show. It's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. We're big in heaven and hell, probably.
Mike, I'd like to say hello. I understand you're doing a stage production.
I am. And I'm glad that you said hello. I'm hoping you remember meeting me back in the mid-1980s.
Oh, I don't really recall a whole lot from the 80s.
That was the 60s that you're not supposed to remember.
I won't say why. Now, Mike, does the young man playing George Bailey, is he doing an impression of me or doing his own thing?
He is not doing an impression of you. We've worked really hard to try and make this our own story. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure, the movie is so iconic and your role in it was so iconic that it's really difficult. I've got my stage manager who has never seen it before, keeping me when I start to beat up on the actors to make it sound like Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed. He tells me, okay, you're pushing the movie again. And some of it we let slip in because it's important.
Oh, good. Real good.
I really hate when assholes try to do a Jimmy Stewart impression.
Exactly, because no one can do Stewart like you can.
I even knocked out Rich Little at a party one time.
I'm sure it's not the first time Rich Little's been knocked out.
Well, guys, I just wanted to call and say hello and tell you how happy I am that you're talking about my picture.
Well, we're glad that you gave us a yell.
Yes, absolutely.
This is such a wonderful film with really beautiful, well-developed characters and a world-class bad guy.
I understand this was your favorite character to play, too.
It was. And I loved the evil old Mr. Potter.
Oh, you did?
You couldn't create a more villainous guy.
Well, he's pretty villainous. You're right there.
Villainous and mean and a wonderful sense of snake oil to him.
Tycoon who tries to put his name on everything.
Yeah.
And tries to control everything, and he thinks he can sue his way out of problems.
Wow. Huh. And that doesn't sound familiar at all.
Could you imagine if somebody like that were, say, like the president of the United States?
Oh, it'd be.
Could you imagine?
It'd be terrible.
Well, back a number of years ago, there was some talk about instead of Ronald Reagan taking over the White House, it should have been you with Ronald Reagan as the best friend.
Oh, well, that's very sweet of you. I'm just glad there's not some bastard in the White House now that's like old man Potter.
Well, I think old man Potter's got less hair.
Well, I don't really keep up with current affairs. We don't get newspapers down here.
Uh-huh.
We just, get podcasts.
I was starting to say, you heard us somehow.
Well, Sammie, I've got to go. I'm about to have lunch with Hitch.
Oh, what? Tell Hitch I'm still holding his cock.
And he's hung up on that one.
Oh my God.
Sammie, I think sometimes you outdo yourself. That's
Oh my God, I can't. I don't even know why that popped in my head. Oh man. Recap and Film Buzz podcast. Hello? Oh wait, okay, now I'm on speaker. Hello?
Sammie Castle, this is your old friend, Al Pacino.
Hello, Al. How are you? Hoo-ah.
Hoo-ah! I'm here because you're talking about Christmas movies, baby. I'm nothing.
Yes, sir. Have you been in a Christmas movie?
No, not really. I'm here with my good friend Chris. We're doing a show on Last Man Cometh.
Oh, yeah?
He wanted to talk to you, too.
Okay.
Hi, Chris. Hi. Wow. This is Christopher Walken. Hello, Sammie.
Hello, Mr. Walken. I'm a huge fan. I just
Sammie,
watched...
we wanted to do a little treat for you Christmas listeners.
Okay.
We got a little story for you.
Oh, excellent.
Chris, you want to start it off?
This ought to be interesting.
It was the night before Christmas, when all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were all nestled and stuck in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap.
Why are you yelling?
Lawn, there arose such a clatter. I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window, I flew like a flash, pulled open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow came to rust on midday. The August below. But what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. Wow. With the little old driver, so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted, and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen. On Comet, on Cupid, on Donda and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, the top of the wall.
You went a little Travolta there.
Now dash away, all.
Wasn't sure if it was Travolta or Balboa.
While hurricanes fly, when they meet with an obstacle mounted to the sky. So up to the housetop, the courses they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and prawning of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around down the chimney, St. Nicholas came with a bound.
A bound.
He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack.
I'm glad it didn't say
How
sack.
they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the bit of his chin was as white as snow. The stub of his pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly.
Jelly!
He was chubby and plump like a jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink in his eye, and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk. He laid his finger aside of his nose and gave a nod at the chimney. He rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like a down of a thistle. But I heard him explain, as he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Hoorah!
Wow.
Thank you for the story, Mr. Walken and Mr. Pacino.
Happy holidays, Sammy.
I got a question for Mr. Walken.
Sure. Shoot.
I watched one of my favorite movies that you were in the other day, and I just want to know what it was like working on Joe Dirt.
I wasn't in that picture.
Oh, that's right. It was some other. You were. Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
It had to have been better than doing Peter Pan.
He makes fun of you and say you're in the wrong film.
What? No.
Sammy, you know, me and Al, we both play a lot of Psycho, so you gotta be careful.
Yes, I do. I don't care.
Sammy, our rehearsal is getting back underway, so we gotta go.
Okay, thank y'all. What are y'all rehearsing for in the afterlife?
In the afterlife,
Yeah. Oh, I know y'all still alive, aren't you?
we're on Broadway.
All right, you've lost it now.
Oh my God.
The Iceman cometh.
Oh, the Iceman's coming. I missed that. I'm sorry. You did tell me that.
Listen, Sammy, we gotta go.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Thank you.
Christmas.
And Happy New Year.
Ah, ooh-ah. Okay, there are so many running jokes with Al Pacino. I made a complete, utter ass out of myself to Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp.
Oh my God.
We interviewed her. I completely screwed up movies. Where have you been?
Freaking Gabriel.
Gabriel.
Uh-oh.
Now we know the angel's name. Oh, was I supposed to say angel?
Yeah, I mean he's an angel.
Okay, okay.
He's an asshole, but he's an angel. He tried to.
I thought Michael was the asshole angel.
Well, he tried to. I thought he took me back to my childhood and all this other crap, and then in the middle of it, he goes, "Hey, I got a pitch for a film. You want to hear it?" I was like,
Oh God, I know.
and he gave me his headshots and everything. I was like, I don't
jeez.
need it. We're trying to pitch our own films around here.
That sounded like a Tom Gore thing to do. Everybody I see that posts something about any movie, somebody could go, "Hey, I had a thought about a movie," and Tom would go, "Available." Oh,
That's my boy.
Well, all right, yeah. Okay, let's get back to the film. You take any calls? Oh, you did? Oh, that's cool.
oh my God, the longest phone call we've ever had.
Oh, maybe we should just get back in the
And
movie.
I could not get Christopher Walken to talk about Joe Dirt, and I wanted him to.
You talked to Christopher Walken?
Yes, him and Al Pacino called.
Oscar-winning actors. Wow.
Yes, they performed
A poem.
A poem, yeah.
Which ties in well because Jimmy Stewart was also a
Yes.
poet.
Oh, wow.
And Jimmy Stewart called it first.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
You
damn
missed
it. I hate that I missed that. Oh, well.
And that ended
Maybe
with
next time.
with a callback joke.
Well, I can't wait to go listen. Okay, let's get back into the movie.
I couldn't breathe for a minute.
All right. So I love as listeners of the show know, I love a good montage. And
Yes, you do.
this is one of my favorite movie montages of Bedford Falls during World War II and the people from Bedford Falls. And there's some glorious rear projection done here where we see
And you're a fan of rear projection too.
there's
Marty, that's Mary's brother.
yeah,
That's very rear projection.
I love that walking towards the screen. intercut with stock footage.
Yeah, I was going to say some of there's a bunch of stock footage in this.
That's where all the budget went to, blowing up that plane. But it shows that everybody in town during World War II kind of put their squabbles aside. They all did their part, even Potter. He sent all the boys off to die.
Then he tries to spit gets it out his chin.
Now, my question is, why did George not get drafted?
His ear.
He was 4F on account of his ear. When he tried to save his brother from falling in the ice early on,
Yeah.
he got water into the ear.
Ah, see, I thought I got that confused. I thought Harry was the one that got watered.
No,
There.
and then Mary could talk to him and tell him that
Gotcha.
she loved him because he didn't have an ear that worked there, and then Gower slapped him on the bad ear.
Gotcha.
And so we see that Harry wins the Congressional Medal of Honor due to his heroic acts during the war. And this is halfway through the film, pretty much. A little bit more than halfway. This is where we really get into the whole meat and potatoes of the present day.
Mm-hmm.
We're finally caught up to present day, and we get to the real drama of the film, in which some money goes missing because I was going to say it's partly due to what's his uncle's name?
Uncle Billy.
Billy.
Uncle Billy's ineptness, but it's also due to Old Man Potter's
Connivance.
conniving. Very good.
Because he could very easily have come back out and said, "Oh, you
Sorry.
gave this to me."
I know we
by
hate each
mistake."
other, but I don't want you to go to jail over this. Here.
Right. But he finds it, leaps through
Decides
it, and
to-
says, "Now what's happening?"
Yeah.
SOBs.
I'm gonna get those Bailey brothers.
And your little dog, too.
Okay, let's skip ahead just to.
What is the little guy? What's the little clerk guy look familiar to?
Eustace.
Is that his name?
Okay, so when
Eustace could act?
he realizes what's happened, George is pretty upset. He's told off Uncle Billy.
Okay, there's somewhere right around in here where I can remember watching
You start
it.
watching
Yeah.
it. He goes home to his beautiful wife and his house full of kids. What, 3 kids, 4 kids?
4 kids.
Which is, for the time, was fairly
Standard.
standard.
A house, a white picket fence, and 2.5 kids.
And kind of almost mirroring the scene earlier in the film, George ain't feeling it. His whole family's into the Christmas spirit, but George isn't. He's got a lot on his mind.
And then little Tommy has his Ben Cooper mask hanging over his head. That caught his eye. It's a Santa mask. And then he finds out his daughter got sick.
It's pre-Ben Cooper, though, isn't it? I don't think Ben
Yes,
Cooper started
I know.
it. Yeah. Okay. But that same style.
But Zuzu's sick, and he decides to tell off the Zuzu's teacher, and he throws a little temper tantrum and leaves. And his wife is like, "Just get out of here if you're going to torture the children." And he goes doing what he swore he would never do: is come crawling to Potter for help.
Because Potter's the only one in town that has that type of money.
And instead of doing the right thing and saying, "You know what? Here's the $8,000 or the whatever $1,000,
Yep. $8,000.
$8,000. I'm gonna swear out a warrant for your arrest. As a matter of fact, you can run, but you can't hide in a town as small as Bedford Falls."
You know, this is a story that's told in a lot of small towns, though. There tends to be one guy or one family who owns the majority of the town.
Yeah. Oh, we have that in my hometown. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So do I.
In Stewart.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
I put their names on buildings and stuff all over town. That's how it is back in my. And not only have they keep businesses from coming in too to help the town growth.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
Anyway, so George is pretty much at his lowest point. He's just got into a fight at the bar, and now he's standing on the bridge contemplating suicide.
Looking down at the water because he's already been told that his life insurance policy, he's only got $500 into it, but it's worth $15,000.
Yeah.
So he's worth more dead than alive.
Which is a good point to make. And that's certainly going through his
God,
mind.
I am.
That's
And there goes Clarence.
And so now, being the good person that George is, he's more concerned about the other guy. And one thing I want to talk about, what?
Go ahead.
I just want to talk about the snow.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to mention, too.
Okay. It's not real snow. They made this in California in the summer. It was super hot when they made this film. So they created a new technique to make snow, and I don't have the specifications, but it was a new formula involving a whole bunch of different things.
And based
You know
on
why?
soap.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, well, it's based, and it's now fire extinguisher stuff, or not fire extinguisher, but firemen use it
Oh,
as,
to put
as
out-
a fire suppressor.
Oh, that's cool.
Do you know why? Before now, everybody used cornflakes painted white.
Cornflakes.
But
yeah.
they made too much noise, so you'd have to overdub it.
Yep.
You had to do a bunch of ADR stuff. So he didn't want to do that. He wanted to use the real sound.
And it looks great.
Oh, yeah, it looks
Yeah.
amazing. And it sticks to everything probably better than cornflakes does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in fact, with the trying to make the Foley effects for the play, and we're doing those live
Oh, really?
as we're doing it.
Oh, now I
The
gotta
suggestion was that we use cornflakes as they're crunching through the snow. The cornflakes aren't big enough. The crunches weren't loud enough. So we're using Doritos instead. We get a better crunch out of the Doritos.
Which flavor?
Whatever cheap ones we can get. Budgets
on
are
sale.
important. Yep.
Just use
I like that Cool Ranch
just
sound.
use corn like cheap Tostitos knockoffs or whatever. Don't waste good Doritos.
But it was all fake snow shot in the summertime, and they actually won some kind of Oscar award from the Academy for creating the new special effect.
Yeah. That was their only Oscar that they got
Yeah.
from this because they were going up against, again, Best Years of Our Lives.
And so now we get a scene where they're drying out, and he's getting acquainted with Clarence, the second class angel who's trying to earn his wings by saving George Bailey. Still doesn't know how to do it.
Well, he's George is a whole lot worse for wear than Clarence is through this.
Well, I think the point you gotta make here is he's at his lowest point in life. I mean, hell, he's almost about to die, about to commit suicide, and this divine intervention, much like in The Christmas Carol, saves his life and turns it around. And
Well, and he's also had a couple of double bourbons and martinis.
yeah.
So,
Had to dive into the cold ass
Yeah.
water. Well, even though it wasn't cold, but
It
it's
is.
supposed to be cold.
And his lips busted, and he's soaking wet.
Yeah, now just things like that. How do you know that?
I told you I'm your guardian angel. I know everything about you.
Well, you look about like the kind of an angel I get.
I've won my wings yet. That's why I'm an angel second class.
And I loved at the beginning when the angels are talking, and he's like, "You can't see because you don't have your wings yet." Like, let me clear that. And I meant to mention that then. I liked how they went from black to ease, from black to blurry, and kind of easing into that.
Yeah,
shot.
the idea is it's supposed to be Clarence's point of view.
Yeah.
That they're,
That was a unique shot.
I agree. This whole
How you going to do that live? No, I'm just kidding. We're all going to sit in the audience and go,
all right,
it's called
Close your eyes.
it's called willing suspension of
there you
disbelief.
go.
well, you got stage lighting, just crank it up.
Well, but again, this is being done as a radio play. Now we do have a little space on there where occasionally the actors will break into instead of it being radio actors playing the character, they would actually have been George and Mary, for example, or George and Potter. And we're doing that a few times and doing it sparingly, but I think it will help. I think the audience will go along with us on it. We'll play with a little bit of lights, and then just a few pieces back and forth to try and help the audience enjoy the story rather than just seeing 4 or 5 people standing in front of microphones and spouting.
Yeah.
And that's another reason we added the Foley stuff live.
There's a reason we don't do video for this.
It's a good reason, yeah. I've often been told I've got a face for radio. So.
So now he's uttered the phrase, well, I guess it'd be better if I just had never been born. And Clarence gets the bright idea that, hey, let's show him what life would be like had he never been around to change it.
This is the Ghost of Christmas Past.
And it's a dark.
And so you notice also the snow stopped at that point.
Yeah. So this is kind of, to me, it feels like it's all three ghosts being pushed into one in the last act of the film. It almost plays like an episode of The Twilight Zone, you know? It feels like that. It's spooky, you know? He's spooked out by the whole thing. He's creeped out that no one knows him. He barely recognizes the town. Because it's not Bedford Falls. We're going to skip ahead of here a little bit. He comes back to town.
And there have been a couple of Twilight Zone episodes where they've played with coming in and people not knowing them anymore.
Yeah. So he goes to the bar, and Martini's not there.
Quick
Martini
note
is there.
while we're there. That's Sheldon Leonard playing Nick, who was the TV producer for the Danny Thomas Show, Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
He was mid-actor at the time.
Did not know that.
And we find out that Mr. Gower did kill that child by poisoning because George wasn't there to stop him. You get kicked out of the bar. Satter looks so drunk. I don't know if he is or not, but he sure can play the part.
Yep.
A jailboy yourself. It takes him forever to get it that this is what's happening. He doubts it the entire time.
He keeps being told, but again, for example, an angel came and talked with you for a little bit and said, "You've never been born." The next time you see Sammie, it's, "Hey, how you doing?" Who the heck are you?
Yeah. And here's my headshot. Here's my resume on the back.
That'll work.
Instead of tied to you, I'm tied to Tom Gore.
That's right. An alternate universe. And this kind of helps explain why you need to build a full town set, because they have to change everything. Everything goes from nice little quaint Bedford Falls to this
Red light district.
Red light district, yeah.
Now,
And the original Bert and Ernie, they don't recognize him.
you really got to be an important person to have this much influence on an entire town.
Not really. It's like ripples in the water. You do one little thing,
It's like the butterfly
and it
effect,
spreads.
you know? I think that one of the points we made here is you don't know how you affect other people's lives. Just the tiny things you do can, like I said, have ripple effect. Here, George punches a cop, going even further into his despair and dark, dark places.
And he goes to his mother. He goes to his house.
Mother doesn't.
It's a
even
boarding
recognize him.
house.
My baby. They don't have a name at all, do they? Just Ma and Pa.
No, it's Rose Bailey and Peter Bailey.
Oh, that's right, they do.
You look at this and look at some of the cinematography that goes into this grayscale work with this. They colorized this thing about 3 or 4 times back when colorization of movies was a big thing to do. And the film looked horrible. You lost the artistry that went into this, working these shades of black and white and gray.
Yeah. Now, nowhere does A Christmas Carol really rear its head than this scene quite so strongly. Where in the original, Ebenezer is wiping off the snow off the tombstone to see his name, and here we see it's Harry, George's little brother, who died because he wasn't there to save him, and all those men he saved in the war died too because he wasn't there to save them.
Because
The ripple
George didn't
effect.
save him.
Yeah.
So he died in 1919 when he was 8 years old. And of course, the standard thing they just worked in the title. It's had a wonderful life.
Where's Mary? Oh, well, I can't. I don't know how you know these things, but tell me, where is she? If you know where she is, tell me where my wife is. I'm not supposed to tell.
I love how dramatic this is.
Tell me where she is. You're not going to like it, George. Where is she? She's an old maid.
No,
Horrors. And a librarian? Oh,
the worst
Horrors.
fate imaginable for a woman in 1946.
An old maid and a librarian.
Some easier way for me to get my wings.
In the Pottersville Public Library.
She looks like
She's a hot old maid.
she looks like the most unattractive version of Mary that could be imagined. The spinster.
You're keeping me out. I'm gonna go home and let my cats protect me.
Some strange man grabs you in the middle of the street.
And
Oh, it's Harvey Weinstein.
Jeez. Or Al Franken.
Yeah.
Oh, and she faints. That's just to make it even better.
Hit him on the head with a bottle.
He's a raving lunatic.
Does some
There's his-
marvelous acting.
Bam!
Decks the cop, takes off running.
And
Tries to
for
kill
shots down the street.
him. Tries to shoot him in the back and runs away.
People all over the place.
Shoot him in the back as he runs away with innocent bystanders.
Yeah, everywhere. Ducking for cover in the snow.
Duck and
And then
cover.
about to run over the guy in the
Yeah.
middle of the street. Damn cops.
And he goes back to the
So
place
he comes
where-
back here, and you look and he says it's time. He's realized what he's done.
Get me back!
I've done great things. Help me.
Happens to me. Get me back to my wife and kids. Help me, Clarence, please. Please. I want to live again. I want to live again. I want to live again. Please, God, let me live again.
And so it starts to snow again.
See how well it sticks? That's got to be better than cornflakes.
Yeah. They bounce off.
It's not as tasty, but
George!
Had the white paint on it. That wouldn't be very good either.
well, they didn't have Frosted Flakes back then.
With pre-milked cornflakes.
What the Sammie you yelling for?
Burke, you know me?
Know you? You kidding? I've been looking all over town trying to find you. I saw your car piled into that tree down there, and I thought maybe you... Hey, your mouth's bleeding. Are you sure you're all right?
What you...
That was kind of weird.
My mouth's bleeding, Burke! My mouth's bleeding!
That's great, but George, I need you to do a little test called the walk and turn. Put one foot in front of the other.
No, this is well past that. We're on
Go
the
ahead and put your hands
full-on
behind your
blood
back,
test
George.
here.
You're under arrest.
He's on something worse than alcohol.
We got driving while impaired, hit and run. What else we got?
Oh, speaking of which, this caught my eye or caught my ear when I was watching it earlier today. When Harry's going out to the party, he looks at Dad or he says something about having some gin.
Gin, yeah.
And they're in high school, and Dad goes, "Oh no gin tonight.
No gin
You know
tonight,
what?
son. Not
Oh
one drop."
man, just a little bit. Yeah, like they do it all the time.
Music
That was-
and girls, why do they need gin?
Yeah,
Teenagers at a party.
I was
I
like,
mean, what else is new,
hey.
you know? Yeah.
That's
But you
what
figure
we
he's
did.
probably 18 at that point, and drinking age was then.
Yeah.
So
This is one of my favorite little moments of the film where he runs through town. It's more of an iconic
It's more
scene of the film.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, you wonderful old building alone!
it's a handheld camera. You,
You
see the movement
know,
there.
even though they're cracking on Potter about
this.
Happy New Year to you! In jail!
He's such a bastard.
but you know, they're talking about Potterville was bad and Potter this and Potter that. There's a lot of Bailey stuff on everything.
Well,
Bailey Bank and Loan,
But just
Bailey
the building
Park,
alone.
and Bailey.
No, nothing. Well, Bailey Park, yeah.
$8,000. I'll get it's a warrant for my arrest. Isn't it wonderful? I'm going to jail. Merry Christmas.
Just shows you what perspective will do for you. Can make anything look good. There's always, could always be worse.
Have you seen my wife?
I have been guilty of driving through my neighborhood at Christmas time with the windows down and screaming, "Merry Christmas, Bedford Falls!" Just to
I'm going to jail.
Just to annoy the people in the car with me.
Okay, there's my moment.
Yeah.
I could eat you up takes on a whole new perspective now too. Modern day. Oh, let's do the flourish.
Oh, yes.
I'm beautiful. Let me throw this stuff off.
Do you guys have a warrant?
Odd kisses.
Stop it. We'll do that later.
That's how we got the 3 kids. 4, whatever.
We got a whole other bedroom. We need children for.
Oh wait, do I get conjugals? Oh, let's just throw everything off the table and do it right here in front of everybody.
That's Donna Reed you're talking about.
Why did
there.
you throw everything off the table?
So she could bring in the basket from Uncle Billy.
Oh no, this thing gets me. Just the overwhelming generosity of everyone in town who wants nothing more than to help out their friend
Yep.
in his
Who
in
has
his time
helped
of
them at one point or many in their lives.
need. Yeah.
And that was the guy earlier that was like, I'm going to Potter and sell mine for half off. God bless us, everyone.
Exactly.
Hey, let me throw another couple dollars.
And in turn, what a wonderful Christmas celebration to have everyone there together. You know.
I robbed the National Bank. Just for you, George. This is all the money you gave me for my servitude to you, but I'm going to give it back to you now.
And they're all so happy to do it too. You know.
Yeah.
Quiet. Now get this. It's from London.
Oh,
Mr. Gower cabled you need cash. Stop. My office instructed to advance you up to $25,000. Stop. Hee-haw and Merry Christmas, Sam Wainwright.
Aw. Hee-haw.
Do you think a couple of people are just like quietly taking their money back? Like, don't need this anymore, right? You're good, right?
You're good. Now, there's one person I did recognize here. The maid.
What was she in?
From. Uh-oh. I shouldn't have asked the question, huh?
Magic with Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, really?
The ventriloquist. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, she's in it. Many moons.
Well,
later.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, she's on up there, but yeah, she's.
I love how the sheriff just tears the warrant in half and throws it in the pile like, screw Potter.
Harry comes in from Washington.
Just a little cherry on top here.
And I just happen to have my accordion in the car.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town.
Instead of a Christmas song, let's do a New Year's song. Or maybe it was a Christmas song back then.
Remember, no man is a failure who has friends.
Thanks for the wings. Love, Clarence.
That's a Christmas present from a very dear friend of mine.
look, Daddy. Teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
And the most iconic line.
That's right. Not a point, Clarence.
So, okay. Maybe I missed something. Maybe it just kind of flew me over. Was there some significance to Tom Sawyer? Or is it just...
It's the book that he had on him.
Well, and Clarence was reading it as Joseph called him over to see the story of George Bailey.
Drawing
And then
it
he was
out.
talking to, had it with him, drawing it out in the bridge keeper's cabin, and said, no, you ought to see the book that Mark Twain's writing now. So he's been busy typing away up in heaven.
Do you
love
do you
Twain,
think
so.
that the idea that it's there on the table too is to kind of, I never caught this before till you mentioned, so I'm glad you did, that maybe even Clarence was there in spirit and dropped the book on the table to put his, to make himself
Very much
known.
so. Now, another connection here as we go up, they're scrolling the credits here. I missed, there's Violet. Gloria Graham played Ado Annie in the film version of Oklahoma.
Really?
She wasn't a singer, but they faked it.
Sheldon Leonard.
Yep.
Did not know that.
Yeah, this film holds up.
It does.
It's still one of my favorites, and
I've seen it hundreds
does
of
hold
times
up
now.
well.
It's just
And that's to me that's a true test of a movie is
A classic.
is how well it holds up.
yeah.
Because there's some great movies that just don't hold up very well.
they're too much of the period.
And there's been some movies I've loved that we've done for the podcast that we got here and I was like, it didn't hold up very well. Most
like the one
most famously Blade Runner just didn't hold up.
Or the one that just got published 19 minutes ago.
Oh, Clue.
Clue, yeah. And I, as we keep saying I keep pushing the idea that how the similarities between this and A Christmas Carol. At the end we see a completely changed person, and it's all because he's been given this gift, this perspective on life, and his life is changed by it, and he's a changed person, and even the prospect of going to jail is nothing. Whatever, it's fine. I'm alive. I'm here. You're here. This is Bedford Falls, not Pottersville, and it's a good, heartwarming story, especially for Christmas time. To understand that being the richest man in town may not have anything to do with money. It's all about all the people around you and the
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think that'll wrap up our conversation on It's a Wonderful Life. I could probably sit here and watch it over and over and talk about it all night. But Mike, where can folks find you? Where can they go to find more of your?
Unfortunately, this will come out a week after.
Unfortunately, after the play, but you're in movies.
I am. In fact, we mentioned Tom Gore's name earlier. He and I are in The Haunting of 4 Points with Sammie.
Yeah.
I am now the poor man's Tom Gore. So.
It has been in a few things. Tom and I are similar in appearance. We both have beards. We're both tall. I'm a bit more rotund than he is, but we play well as father and son in the beginning of that film. And the beards help because I've seen pictures of him without the beard. And But it was a
the
wonderful
beard helped.
There's a Civil War film that's currently making the rounds called Our War, and I had a role in that. And keep looking for other projects to be involved in. Absolutely. I do a lot of theater, mostly in the Winston-Salem area. I don't have anything on the books right now after Wonderful Life, but you never know what's coming up. And currently, I'm the afternoon host for All Things Considered on WFDD, which is Winston-Salem's NPR station.
Very cool. Very cool. It just reminds me I need to make my pledge this year. I haven't done that yet. Sorry.
Please do.
Mike.
Please do. In fact, we just finished up our backpack drive, and it's a neat thing because you get to make a pledge. And for any pledge, no matter the amount, a couple of companies will donate a backpack full of food to kids that are food insecure.
Yeah.
So they can take it home and have food over the weekend.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool deal.
That is very cool. Sammie, where can folks find you?
You will be able to find me drowning at the bottom of a river, waiting on Angel.
Hey, Gabriel!
Call George Bailey to come get you
Gabriel,
out.
get over
Trying
here.
to get Angel to help me get his wings while saving me in the process. Where were we at? I don't have anything going on. Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're having a little bit of a break here.
We're Oh crap! Oh, we just had the Marketplace Cinema short film gala.
Yeah.
Including a double dip by me and Tom and the aforementioned Tom Gore and you were only in one movie, right?
In one for that, yeah.
Our War, and Zach was involved with multiple.
Went really well. It was a great.
Yes,
Great time
I'm really super excited. I'm doing something Saturday that I've never done before.
And what is that?
I'm going to be in a parade.
Cool.
I've
Really?
watched many parades.
Wow.
I've never been in. Well, no, I'm sorry. I was in a parade as a small child as
About
part
to
of
say,
the Cub Scouts.
Pretty sure there's a picture of
There's
the documentary of you in a parade. But
Yeah, and as a Cub Scouts. But as an adult, I've never been in a parade.
So are you going to be superhero costumed
yes.
for this?
We're doing. I have
be
some
Santa
friends who
Claus.
own a gym/beauty salon in Madison, North Carolina, and they're doing a float, and it's a superhero themed float. Although I don't know, we're going to get in some trouble because we have. They have an instructor who does Zumba, yoga, and pole dance instructing. And Terry is going to be dressed as Harley Quinn on a pole in the middle of the float.
Oh, my.
So I'm kind of worried that they're just going to take the float away and make all the rest of us walk. But yes, we're doing superheroes. We've got a Wonder Woman, a Punisher, a Batman, a Superman, and I'll be going as Thor. And instead of, they're all giving out candy, but there's going to be 2 or 3 of us, and we're going to give out comic books.
very cool.
Yeah. I'll go through the collection tomorrow night to see what I can start pulling and handing out to small children. I have separate boxes. We have adult books and children books. So.
Yeah, we don't want to get those mixed up.
So I'm really looking forward to it, or I really had a good time, whichever one you want to look at this at. Well, at least I hope I had a good time. Wait to listen to the next podcast to see how much trouble we got into.
Uh-oh.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Hank vs. the Undead. We're on Instagram at Recapit Productions. You can email us at recapitproductions@gmail.com. Check out all our multiple Facebook pages. I think we're up to 7 now.
Yeah.
With different projects we're
Something
involved
like that.
in. So check any of those out.
Midnight
And,
Shift, Sammie the Comic Book Man. Yeah. Hank.
Yeah, and
Hank still gets shot out from time to time.
as it should.
They got one today.
That's right. The Throwback Thursday.
Yep.
Feel free to just go to our website to listen to this, and you can find every episode of this show and our other show, Carolina Haints, at recapitproductions.com. So I think it's appropriate to say here at the end of the episode, this is the ending of our 2nd year of the show. Our first episode was January 1st, 2016, and so we're up to episode 60-something now, something like that. So we've been enjoying doing it. So we'll be back in January. We've already recorded those episodes, so we've got
The first one, anyway.
We know for a fact we'll be back.
Yes.
But we'll be back with a top 10 sci-fi list, which is a first for us to do a top 10 list of any kind. Usually we focus on a specific movie, but we'll get back to that very soon as well. So have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2018.
And happy Hanukkah and happy
Kwanzaa
holidays,
and happy
Kwanzaa,
everything
and
else.
we don't
Have a
wanna leave
wonderful
anybody out.
holiday season.
Yes.
Yep.
Happy holidays.